Hello, everybody. Recording live from somewhere.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Pursuit Pod. I'm your host, Calvin Lymper. First off, happy Thanksgiving. I hope everyone had a good stuffed plate, enjoyed some fun football games, and overall had some good quality time with their family. Last week was a final hurrah for the month of November, and we've got a lot on our plate to get into. So, no more rambling. Let's get right into Roundball Rock. So, Pistons still showcasing great basketball, winning tough. JB Bickerstaff had led a gritty Pistons team that might not be all the anchor play seen with the bad boy Pistons or the 2014, but it surely earned some fighting wins versus Miami and Atlanta in recent play. These games were won primarily without shooting, with sharpshooter Duncan Robinson being out and Detroit only making 5 triples in the Miami game. Not to mention Miami got the ball from Detroit 23 times. But Detroit still played basketball the right way with toughness. They out-rebounded Miami by 26, nabbed 11 steals themselves, and 9 blocks. Not to mention their leader, Cade Cunningham, truly coming into his own as a confident leader, rolling right into Hawks defenders Dyson Daniels and Jalen Johnson for a game-winning reverse layup. And he beat out Rim Menace's Alexander Walker and Okongwu to seal the game. The Pistons have immense depth, and this is seen with, the guy that I shouted out in the Premier Pursuit podcast with Ron Holland. He's been an amazing two-way talent for them. When things are getting ugly, the Pistons find a way to win. And that's a big reason why they're number one in the Eastern Conference right now, and they're not going to look back yet. The Pistons are on a roll, and they're going to continue to be on a roll for the time being. We want to talk about a team that's been coming out of nowhere recently, the Mavericks. Finally on a win streak. It began with Cooper Flagg's 35 points against the Clippers. He's truly coming into his own in running the offense for Dallas, and he's finding his groove in the big leagues, and it really comes with a lesson from the Pistons in aggressiveness. He's the youngest player in NBA history to score 35 points in a game. Flagg added 24 and 8 in a win over the Nuggets in the next game. He aided an 11-0 run to beat out Jokic's squad and win against a contender. He stepped up huge with injuries being added to the list for the Mavericks. Anthony Davis has been out recently, PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford, and then even the post anchor Derek Lively. With this, it really cannot be understated the impact that Klay Thompson has had in recent contests. I mean, the 4-time champion, he opened up the year shooting the 3-ball under 30%. Looked like they might as well just cut him, but he found a spark in 17 fourth quarter points versus the Clippers. And he added 15 points with trace triples in the Nuggets game. Anthony Davis also finally came back for the Mavericks recently after an extended absence. 32 points, spoiled yet another huge triple-double for Nikola Jokic, and capitalized on Denver's woes at home. And there's still trade rumors piling up for Anthony Davis. He still shows his value as he continues to battle unfortunate string of injuries. Now, we got to forget all the talk about these familiar names, Cooper Flagg, Klay Thompson, Anthony Davis. Ryan Nembhard, 28 points and 10 assists versus Denver. The first undrafted player to have 25 plus and 10 assists in a game without a turnover. Incredible efficiency for the rookie. And last time we saw a stallion like this, it was Andrew Nembhard, his brother. So I would not be surprised to see Dallas make a roster move in the coming weeks to clear up space to make Nembhard a mainstay in Dallas, Texas. Ever since college, he's been on a tear. And just like we saw with Colin Gillespie in recent weeks, undrafted rookies, undrafted guys that had to really fight for a spot in the league, they're doing their thing. And there's a reason that these guys run the league nowadays. You see it with Austin Reeves. And speaking of the Lakers, we got to talk about LeBron James. He had the worst night of his career, arguably. 10 points, 0 rebounds, 3 turnovers. He sat out last game against New Orleans. It also shut down the Lakers' 7-game win streak because of his load management. This game, where he put up 10 points, 0 rebounds, 3 turnovers, that was the second lowest points, rebounds, and assist total of his career, according to StatMuse. And it was the 6th time in his career that he had no boards. This has definitely opened up the possibility of LeBron just being too old for the NBA, hitting the retirement button and calling it a career. I mean, the game just could be too much and too fast-paced, like we saw with Steve Kerr in recent weeks, talking about how that's why there's more players being out all the time. This game could just be too fast-paced for his body to handle, despite the insane longevity. I mean, he barely kept his double-digit scoring streak alive. I mean, if he were to do a retirement tour for the rest of the year, I heard reports saying that he would need to feel more responsibility to suit up every game and play. I don't know, with all these injuries right now and just the fact that his body might not be able to keep up, I don't know if it's possible for him to continue on for 2 more years or however long that he planned. With this looming, I mean, the NBA has to shift gears. They have to focus their marketing on how to continue after stars like James, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant are inevitably gone in the next 3 or so years. The NBA's lost its viewership after Michael Jordan retired in 1999, and the viewership tanked when Stephen Curry and Kevin Durant were sitting out in injuries in 2019. This just shows that the NBA still relies on the immense star power of these guys. Victor Wembanyama, talked about Cade Cunningham earlier, Anthony Edwards, they've been proving themselves to be must-see TV for NBA fans. But we have to see how far the NBA can go off profiting their success before they really feel the true effects of the lack of LeBron holding it down. Obviously, guys like Wembanyama that are maybe the next LeBron, all the nice freshmen coming in from college, they might be game changers for the NBA. They might be people for the NBA to market, and they might be able to take the throne of the king and make huge impacts as such young players that we might just be seeing the new evolution of the NBA in real time. But I mean, again, Michael Jordan retired and the NBA viewership and interest just went completely down. LeBron James could retire and we could be seeing the same exact thing. I mean, because there's already a whole bunch of stars, but the fact that you still have James Harden is doing his thing every night. Stephen Curry's still shooting lights out. I mean, Klay Thompson just said he's been looking an underdog there in Dallas. How much can you profit off these guys that have just been stellar their entire careers, and they've just made amazing must-see TV for the NBA in the past years? How much can Wemby, how much can Cade and Anthony Edwards, how much can they be, those guys are all number 1 picks, how much can they be the new profit makers for the NBA? We'll talk about the Chicago Bulls. They've been on a downward spiral. They were very hot along with my Sixers in the beginning of the year, but they're now making NBA headlines because they want to be the new Indiana Pacers. They surged early to lead the East with the newfound pace under Billy Donovan, a top 5 assist percentage, yet they've fallen back to be a play-in contender just like the past few years. The Bulls trusted Josh Giddey to be their Tyrese Halliburton, to play out of his mind for such a fast-paced team. But the Bulls simply do not have a Pascal Siakam. They don't have the same defensive prowess that the Pacers that went to the NBA Finals, they boasted that. And trying to go for a fast team, I mean, they shipped away Alex Caruso, the NBA's top energy guy, and now he's popping champagne in OKC. It's good to see that the Bulls are exercising great depth. Don't get me wrong. They're second right now in the league for bench points, but they don't have the collective defense to get it done. Nikola Vucevic showed the first frustrations of the Bulls in a viral post-game interview just a week ago, where he didn't blink an eye to the antics of his younger teammates around him, like Jalen Smith. They were saying, "No, cheer up, man." And he said, "No, you guys are soft, and this pace of play is just unsustainable. We're not the Pacers." Vucevic's interview showed just as much. How much can the Bulls rely on just following this model of basketball? The best teams in the league have their own identities. OKC, MVP, all defensive guys around him. They have a second unit, like I said last week, that could very well be a 49-win team on their own. Denver has Jokic, one of the best players in the world. Two-way forwards and great shooting wings surrounding him. The Rockets, I talked about them last week. Distinct bully ball, paired with lights-out shooting, and just a big man lineup there. But the Bulls are looking for their Pacers role. And I mean, talked about Anthony Davis earlier, but they look to him, Anthony Davis, to be that Siakam role. But I just don't think that there is a way to emulate that, that right place, right time trade opportunity the Pacers got with Pascal Siakam when they got him a few years back. I mean, you can squint your eyes. I saw this in an article. You could really squint your eyes, and maybe you see the Bulls as just a simply worse 2024-25 Pacers, and you just cannot follow the same model as another team and expect your players to follow suit. We've seen this in recent years with people trying to capitalize off the energy and the fast pace and the shooting of the Warriors. And yes, they changed the league and they made three-point shooting the new norm. And if you don't have a three-point shot, you're not going to be in the league. They changed that all on their own. But you can't just emulate the Golden State Warriors and expect yourself to be an NBA contender all of a sudden, because every team tried to do it. And now every team is just that Golden State Warriors team all over again. Every team. There's no team that doesn't emulate them like that. See a team like the Pacers, how they have their own identity, and you want to steal that, it's just not going to work because you're not going to have that spark. You're not going to have that specific coaching. You're not going to have, unless you just get all those guys from the Pacers in Chicago, you're not going to have that specific player mentality. You're not going to have the same exact chemistry. It's not going to work the same if you're just doing, flip-flop back and forth, trying to redo everything. I want to finish out Roundball Rock with a very interesting article that I read from the Golden State Warriors SB Nation fan site, Golden State of Mind, and I think that it clearly showed the differences between the older eras of the NBA and the new age in terms of toughness. And there's new social media conversations on how important our individual or team performances and the value of those performances. Topic of the table was Draymond Green and Kenyon Martin. Kenyon Martin was, Secretary of Defense, one of the prime examples of being a pest in the basketball sense. All over the court, massive reason for the Nets' success in the turn of the 2000s. All of this from a 6'9" forward. He was a player who fit right into the tough era of basketball that there was at the time, where Shaq was in the post, easy buckets underneath, Tim Duncan reigned supreme. It was just playing the game the right way, according to, fundamentals and all of that, but Martin began an unintentional beef with Draymond Green, saying that he's not a tough player, but he's rather just a calculated one. I think that's high praise and a correct take for a guy like Draymond. He's so decorated in defensive accolades, yet look at the box score. He lacks real stats, efficient numbers, but his on-court presence is the complete definition of a player who'll be missed by those, box score watches. Essentially, their beef was a tale of two similar players, ultimately living in two different NBAs, and both players completely misinterpreting each other's worlds and roles. Green could come in clutch against LeBron and helped win the Warriors titles, but Martin could never muster up the defensive presence against Shaq, who was the best player in the NBA at the time, to be fair. But it adds more to the argument between eras, and it's just simply food for thought for the game constantly evolving and changing. I think that's really the main topic of our basketball discussion here for the pursuit. I think today's is really just talking about the shift between the older NBA and the newer NBA. Maybe it's LeBron James retiring, and then you got to get new guys to profit in here. We saw a change of pace in the NBA created by the Golden State Warriors, basically single-handedly, and then everyone else in the league tries to emulate it. Now you get the Pacers and the Bulls, and then even Draymond Green is kind of like that older, grittier kind of player, but he's playing in the new NBA, and there's a lot of discussion on if his kind of play is sustainable, if his kind of play is the kind that is truly that much valuable to a championship team, which I think it is. And I think that he's a big reason why the Warriors won, and he deserved his all-star votes. I think he's an all-star for a reason. He is still on the Warriors for a reason. He is the Golden State Warriors at the end of the day. I want to move on to our football discussion. It was just Thanksgiving with 4th and 4. It's time to talk about the New England Patriots. I've kept them out of discussions for a long, long time. Both upset wins over the Rams and the Eagles this week. And of course, now my Rams talk is kind of becoming a little redundant on the pod. I want to stay away from them and stay away from the Panthers talk. And it's time to have a real conversation on New England. They just got their 10th straight win over who else but the horrendous New York Giants. So, start out, I just want to throw some numbers out there. The Patriots are riding on a 14th overall FPI ranking. And yes, the ranking might be flawed because it placed the Chiefs as the league's best team in terms of power. But it has the rest of the league where it should be. Now, the Rams, Packers, Lions, Colts, Seahawks, Bills, Eagles, 49ers are up there. Those are the best teams in the league right now. So, it's not entirely biased towards teams with prior success because the Seahawks are up there and they've been surging. The out-of-nowhere culture up there. So I would say it's a pretty accurate. Obviously, the Chiefs being number one, I think that there's some sort of cabal in the NFL to keep them up there, but we just cannot ignore the truth here. Yes, the Patriots are 11-2. Awesome. They're doing great. They're going to be a playoff team. But they have the easiest schedule this year. ESPN states that if an average NFL team controlled games from start to end the way the Patriots did all season, an average NFL team would be ranked 3rd in the NFL. I don't want to deny success or downplay the Patriots as a team that isn't a definite playoff squad because I think they are. They're a much improved team. They have good coaching now. They have a great quarterback, and I'll get into that. But they're far from contenders, in my opinion. I'm not going to go out and say they don't have great wins. They had Buffalo. It was an amazing and crucial divisional win that kind of set the scene for how Buffalo was going to have to be in the year and how New England was going to have to. It was kind of a first showing of what New England really could be. And obviously, that recent dogfight against Tampa Bay was huge, but New Orleans, Tennessee, Cleveland, Atlanta Falcons in back-to-back weeks between those two matchups. And then you top it off, you're playing New York Jets twice because of your division, and you're playing the Giants. As a Patriots fan, you just cannot look me seriously in the eye and say that they've proven themselves to be the best team in the league besides the 11-2 record. Look, I know this is hate watching. I'll end the conversation with some praise. Drake May is legit. He's a franchise guy. Even if they're not a Super Bowl contender right now, they will be in the coming years for sure. Drake May is one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league. The Giants game being his 6th in the season with a 75% plus completion rate with 2 touchdowns. That ties MVP Matt Ryan for 3rd most of those kinds of games. And he's just behind 2007 Tom Brady and last year's Jared Goff. He's definitely the conductor, as Rabel put it, of this Patriots team. And he is what they were missing when they tried to toss Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi, Cam Newton as their QB1. At first, I thought May was just going to be another Mac Jones story. Maybe an AFC East run, early playoff loss, but he's been a legit MVP candidate, I can't lie. I don't think the Patriots go 11-2 without him. I don't think they get the wins over these easier teams without him. He could be the 3rd quarterback in NFL history to lead the league in completion percentage and passer rating. And that would be just alongside the 2007 Tom Brady and 2001 MVP Kurt Warner. And their schedule, again, they still have one of the easier schedules even remaining, but they're going to finish the season out against the Bills, Ravens, Jets, and Dolphins. I think that the Bills game, the Bills rematch will be the true testament to how good the Patriots team really is and how Drake May could hold against a contender's defense. Obviously, division games are really tough because it can go either way. I think, and I still think to this day, that earlier matchup between the Bills and Patriots was a fluke. I think that it was a divisional scare. You're always going to lose teams in your division, no matter what, unless you're really the best team in the league. So I think the Bills are a better team overall. I think Josh Allen is an incredible quarterback, and I think that this Bills-Patriots game coming up is probably my most anticipated game to see how good the Patriots really are. But again, maybe I'm just sick of the Patriots being that good, and I just want them to be bad for the rest of my life. There's always that. Makes sense. That's kind of a big reason why people don't want them to be good, why people are bringing up the strength of schedule thing. So I could be biased, but yeah, I am biased. I'll just say I'm biased. I'm hate watching the Patriots. But if you want to talk about real contenders, I got to mention the sneaky Green Bay Packers. They're riding a 3-game win streak to compete for the NFC North once again with the Chicago Bears. Micah Parsons finally woke up with the value that he was traded for. He had 6 sacks in the past 3 games. Jordan Love throwing 6 touchdowns over that same stretch. They're only below the Bears because they have yet to have head-to-head matchups with them. And they're going to have 2 games between those 2 rivals. And that's going to make a big difference about the NFC side of the playoff push here. Green Bay could very well end up being the number 1 seed in the NFC, depending on how those games go. Parsons going to look to cause some trouble against Caleb Williams, who he hasn't been a perfect quarterback this season, but he's definitely been a mostly mistake-proof quarterback at this point. They keep winning really close games. The Bears' defense is also of really high quality, and they're the turnover leader in the league, and that could disrupt the Packers' surge. But the Packers are top 5 in the power rankings yet again, all across the board, all across every website. And they're going to have Jaden Reed back, their best statistical receiver in the past 2 seasons, and he could end up being an X factor for them in the playoffs. Defensive end, Brendan Cox is going to take up snaps in the wake of Devontae Wyatt being out and Lucas Van Ness taking a fall for the D-line. So we could be seeing the Green Bay Packers at the spot they should have been all year. They started the season super slow, super sluggish, but they've been riding a good trend here, and they're going to face the Bears twice to end out the season, and we're going to see, just like the Bills-Pats, we're going to see the true test of who's the better team there, in my opinion. I think that those 2 matchups are definitely the ones that are going to be the most important for playoff pushes for both conferences. Now, we've talked about the top of the league. We've talked about the Rams. Of course, I always talk about the Eagles, talk about the Seahawks a lot, but I think in this episode, I want to talk about and highlight the guys at the bottom of the league, the guys that only get a lot of media coverage, and maybe it's for good reason. I want to start by dissecting the Atlanta Falcons. Bijan Robinson led the team again with an 150 scrimmage yard game against the Jets, truly doing it all for the team that drafted him and showing them the potential that he promised before the season. But they lost to a last-minute field goal against the Jets. The New York Jets, and they are now 4-8 on the season. I mean, 3 words: fire Raheem Morris. That starts it. And the team just might be on the cusp of another rebuild upcoming, if they ever were in one in the first place. They're going from irrelevancy with Arthur Smith to just absolute disappointment. It's really just the looming of scary, scary times for Atlanta. It began with the firing of receiver coach Ike Hilliard after week 3, and that really just collapsed any identity that Morris wanted to begin here in Atlanta. I'd say it had the complete opposite effect to what he wanted to do. Atlanta receivers besides Mr. Drake London had absolutely no success in scoring. Morris basically said that Hilliard tried to undermine him, but for what? Why? And why do the special team staff all still have their jobs? They're 30th in punt return yards, 32nd in yards per kick return, and 25th in field goal percentage, and not to mention 32nd in kickoff coverage. When your plan is to hope your opponent gets a touchback every time you kick or punt, you're a bad football team. When you have excuses for firings that ultimately don't make sense, you're a bad football team. Kadarius Hodge was a healthy scratch for the Jets game solely because he made a mistake in the Saints game. And then your special teams give up an 83-yard kick return and muff a punt. The special teams are a part of the game. Special teams, special players, as Sketch said. And you have other firings to make. Special team units. Offensive coordinator Zach Robinson. How can this team be so bad with a league best 92.9% red zone success in the past 5 weeks? Yet they have a 1-4 record in those games. Where is the clock management skill that you were hired for, Raheem Morris? I mean, it's a mess in Atlanta, but it could be worse. You could be the Las Vegas Raiders. Chip Kelly was fired there. On to the next in the coaching staff with QB coach Greg Olson. But wait. 31 yards still. Geno Smith gets pressured the entire game with no break, and well, you just fixed your problem, but it's still there. Is it Kelly? Is it Olson? Is it a god-awful team? Or is it a god-awful O-line? Oh, now we're getting somewhere. Yeah. And Ashton Genty had 4 attempts for negative yards. A generational talent at running back, and you can do nothing to surround him with actual firepower to get him to do what he does best. A generational talent, and he's had absolutely zero production all year. Oh, okay. Las Vegas Raiders. Yep. Geno Smith helped out a little bit in some of the pass offense's best showing in this past game. Has highest completion rate of the year with 78%. So you can cut Geno some slack despite him having just an absolutely terrible year because he's been sacked 25 times in the past 4 weeks. There's no third down offense. You have a 0.25% conversion rate and 4 sacks on Geno in the third down. This is just not a fun team. They have Ashton Genty. They have Max Crosby. This should be a team that really has a lot of following behind it, but they just suck, period. I've never been this fired up about a team before, but how can your offensive line just be this terrible? I expect the Raiders to draft a quarterback, and then after that, only offensive linemen. Or if that, maybe they should target an offensive line, just like the Bears did to turn around Caleb Williams' constant pressure. And now they're the number 1 seed in the NFC. The Raiders got to do better. I mean, they're just a god-awful team. They have just god-awful management. I don't even think that Pete Carroll's a bad coach. They just need to figure it out. I don't even think that firing Chip Kelly was a good decision, and I'm a guy my childhood was destroyed by Chip Kelly. So now we talked about disappointment. We talked about just utter failure. Now let's talk about the mid of the league. Arizona Cardinals. The tagline of their 2025 season is good, but not good enough. Jacoby Brissett, guy who's definitely played himself into a starting job for next year, maybe even for the Cardinals. He put it best, saying it's just about execution. He's completed 68% of his throws on the season and 2,188 passing yards with a 13-4 touchdown-interception ratio. He's led the Cardinals to a 2.5 jump compared to him being under center and Kyler being the QB1. He keeps composure and poise under pressure, but the issue is he still hasn't won any more than Kyler has, at least not this year. Their most recent Buccaneers loss is the 7th one-score game the Cards have dropped this year. The Cardinals frequently outgained their opponent and have statistically been a solid team despite the loss of Kyler. Every game for them this season has been the same exact story laid out on a silver platter. And I don't know what blame there is to be put on the offensive staff or if it really just comes down to little mistakes by the players. They've been outplayed in really only the 4th quarter this year. They have a negative 40 point differential in that period. I mean, there's definitely highlights. Again, Jacoby Brissett's doing really well. Trey McBride's been having a standout season. He's had 5+ receptions the entire season for every game. They obviously Marvin Harrison Jr., he hasn't really been developed properly, but he's still a weapon there. Defense isn't even that bad. They have Josh Sweat. Buda Baker's still there, but I don't know if I'd place Jonathan Gannon as a fireable coach right now. And you can't really move on comfortably from Kyler Murray because he's been the spark of this franchise, especially in 2020, 2021. He had MVP level years, and he's just so middle of the pack in the NFL in the quarterback rankings that it's risky to get rid of him in case you can't get a better option easily. But it's also too risky to keep him because there's always the better option available. At their ceiling and with slightly better execution, the Cardinals could be 10-2 right now. And I mean, it just really shows that, we talked about the Bears earlier, it just shows the best teams are the ones that pull out close games. That was a very, very fired up segment. And so I think that we have to just move on before it gets a little more heated. Let's just put our stick on the ice here. We've had conversations about red hot teams that are surging out of nowhere like Anaheim and Chicago, but the first to fall from grace have been the Utah Mammoth. The team was blown out in a recent contest against the Sharks, and they just looked frustrated. They dropped 4 straight. As adversity strikes this Utah team, they continue to bat down and fall further and further into a pit they just don't want to be in. They've won only 4 of their last 17, and the stats prove that Utah is becoming a poor hockey team. They're 7th worst in save percentage. They have the worst power play unit in the league, and they've been outscored 59-43 since their hot streak started the season with 7 wins. The Sharks scored 6 goals in them in the last contest. More than half of those goals were results of defensive mistakes by Utah. They've just looked inexperienced, flat-footed, out of position when offensive pressure rushes into their zone. They've now fallen a point out of a wild card spot. And who knows if there's a turnaround for Utah. Now, if you want to flip onto the other side of that game and get a little more optimism, let's talk about the San Jose Sharks. They're continuing their surge to the first wild card position in the West. Of course, it mainly comes from Macklin Celebrini just being one of the best players in the NHL right now, but it's also newfound confidence in the other young center for the Sharks and Will Smith. In the Utah game, he netted in 2 goals, and the key for him has just been shooting when the opportunity is there. And he just trusts in his ability and trusts in his shot. San Jose is continuing to be a very fun, tight-knit team that just might continue to cruise their way into the playoffs and might surprise some teams and some people come postseason time. Now, we'll get into all the Philadelphia Flyers talk later on, but Sidney Crosby is about to break the Penguins' all-time leading scorer record. That was Mario Lemieux's record, because he had 2 goals against the Flyers that sent him to be only 7 points now behind one of the GOATs. Crosby, he's on the wrong side of 30s now, but he's still one of the best players in the league. He's scored 18 goals so far. He's only a few behind Nathan MacKinnon and Morgan Geekie's tie at 20. While the Penguins have definitely struggled as of late with 7 losses in the last 9 within the month of November, Crosby's star power and record watch can definitely be something for the Penguins to cheer on and watch closely at, keeping in viewers and ensuring they keep watching to see if records are broken. The record would rightfully place Crosby as one of the best NHL players of all time and the best Penguin of all time if he's not already. Crosby can only be fueled by such praise, just like Ovechkin was fueled for his record-breaking year and his 900 goals, and now he's on a tear. Crosby can only be fueled by this record watch, and despite most players at this time of their career slowing down, you really just cannot watch a Penguins game without his aura and state of being having the largest storyline on the ice. As stated by Flyers commentator Jim Jackson, who else but Sidney Crosby? And while the Penguins have found themselves in a rut in the month of November, the month was won by the Chicago Blackhawks, and namely, their star, my boy, Connor Bedard. He's been continuing his third-year leap in dramatic, successful fashion, recording 7 multi-point games, 11 primary assists, the most in the NHL at that stretch, 4.66 goals per 60 minutes, that's 5th in the NHL, and 7.04 individual expected goals, which is 13th. Here's some fun food for thought. As is tradition with Bedard talks with usual stat comparisons in the pursuit, he put up 1 more point than Patrick Kane's 23-point showing in November of his 2015 Hart campaign. Bedard's speed has increased mightily over the past year, and he just plays with so much fire in his gut. That was really just something that you wanted to see out of someone who had a rough sophomore slump that he had. If there's no politics involved, I think that Connor Bedard and the aforementioned Macklin Celebrini should both be wearing Team Canada jerseys this upcoming Winter Olympics. Now, I want to finish out my stick on the ice with a touchy subject, but one that'll transition us into Flyers talk, and that is Carter Hart. He's officially made his debut in the 2025 NHL season, his first game after the sexual assault trial that nearly ended his career, and probably should have ended his career, but the whole trial is a touchy subject. I don't want to share my thoughts here directly because I could just go on and on about it and how it was terrible for hockey, how it was terrible for those guys and for the victim, and just a disgusting case all across the board. All I gotta say is after one game, I think that Hart could really find himself to be a huge asset for the Golden Knights. Akira Schmid, he's boasted a 9-4 record and an .896 save percentage, 2.2 goals saved above expected, but Carl Lindbom has been the opposite story. He has a single win and negative 2.7 goals saved above expected for the Golden Knights. Their main guy, their ace, Adin Hill, his injury in late October has kept him out recently, but as he returns, the Golden Knights will now have options to move goaltenders in potential transactions. Hart had a 3.07 goals saved above expected stat in the AHL as he was prepared to debut in the 2025 season. But obviously, the AHL is just a different level of hockey. And, he was a great goalie in Philadelphia, don't get me wrong. And he only last played in January 2024. It's not like it's been 5 years. So he definitely will make an impact with Hill out for Vegas. And he already has a win against the Blackhawks with his debut. 15 minutes left in regulation, he does not allow a goal. In overtime, he doesn't allow a goal. And he only allowed Bedard to have a goal in the shootout. So he has a win on his Vegas record. And Vegas is now one game better because of him. So say what you want about Carter Hart, but he's back. And there's a lot of politics in that. And there's a lot of different stuff with that. And it's just a very touchy subject, but it's important hockey news, and so it's important that it's out there and it's all said and done, and that he had his first game and whatever, he's still good now. So now transitioning from Carter Hart to his former team, the Flyers. The game against the Penguins was just not our night at all, don't get me wrong, but there is just something, like I said in the last few weeks, that there is just something to be excited about for these Philadelphia Flyers. I spoke last week about how their back-to-back record was their killer, but they finally proved Philly wrong with 2 wins in back-to-back nights. And they're both in exhilarating fashion with a shootout and then a regulation win. That's points. I'll take them. The Flyers have shown a hot streak. They've gone 3-1-0 in a road trip leading up to the clash for Pennsylvania. They namely beat the Devils team that just could not lose at home. That was definitely a statement win and a statement for our firepower of the squad. They happened to drop 3 straight goals to the Islanders, but they just kept on fighting. And of course, the Flyers are automatic in the shootout. I think a lot of the success can definitely be attested to our 9th best penalty kill with Coutier, Dvorak, Sealer, and Sanheim being an incredibly solid line to keep us rolling on shorthanded matchups. And they've just kept us alive in multiple efforts, and they've just shown the resiliency of this hockey team. And this is really just a general look at the Flyers attack, but it's been a really balanced team this year. As much as I like to put all the chips on Zegras and put all the chips on Mitch Cobb, the Flyers are boasting 8 players with 5+ goals. And even Drysdale, Cam York, and Sanheim are adding a lot of point production from the defensive side. We've just recently got an injury, non-contact injury to Tyson Forrester, which could be huge for us as he's been one of those 5+ goal makers. And you can see that shift of momentum that happened with the Flyers as he left the game after he scored. Penguins outscored us the rest of the night, 4-0. Rick Tocchet, despite Flyers Twitter calling for his head every other loss, he's just been a gem for the new direction of orange and black. His box and one defensive zone structure has allowed an average of 26 shots per night. He's limited high danger chances, and they've switched to a 2-1-2 forecheck, and it's created a very sustainable offense for the Flyers. Crossing Broad's Jason Myrtus pointed out that moving into December, the Bullies have a point percent at 6.46%, which is 6th in the league, and it's a huge turnaround for the metric being our 7th worst in the last few seasons with a 4.56%. This team just fights for it more nowadays. They just score plenty. They can get big wins, not to mention their 51.04% in 5-on-5 goal share and our 10th best in the league in that metric. There's still plenty of season left for the Flyers, just like we saw with the Mammoth. Anything can happen, but they're still dangling on to that second wildcard spot. They're 2 points above Columbus and the Islanders, and they're just 1 point below the Caps and the Metro. Now, I try to avoid it, but we got to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. I wasn't happy about last week, but they just dropped another ugly one, the Chicago Bears, in absolutely terrible fashion. There's just no effort from either the defensive side or the offensive side. Let's get this straight before the narratives begin. Jalen Hurts was awful. Yeah, this is not a true showing of what he is as an NFL quarterback. The Eagles just simply are not operating with urgency, explosive creativity. I said before, they lack a run game this year. Saquon Barkley is just non-existent. They lay no faith on Tank Bigsby, who's shown up big in the past few games, and they've been relying on Will Shipley instead. This defense, who I said in past weeks they could lead us to a Super Bowl their lonesome, Kyle Monanagi and DeAndre Swift both have 130-yard games, a touchdown each in the same game. This run game, lack thereof, and the defense, huge reason to the lack of team failures. Now, the run game can stem largely down to the staple of the Eagles offense for a decade now, the offensive line, who've just been letting in anyone that knocks the door. Saquon's been stuffed a yard into his rush every time. Nick Sirianni pointed out that Hurts' lack of carries this year and less design runs with him. There are just no design runs in the first place for this team. For a quarterback that's supposedly a running back, as everyone tries to tell him to be, there's no faith in his running from the offensive scheme. And he continues to sling the deep ball well, but he no longer has a pocket with this O-line just being as undisciplined and outright awful as they have been. An important thing I saw recently was Seth Joyner called out A.J. Brown for the fact that he is not complaining now after 2 straight games with 9+ targets and a touchdown. He points out how AJ doesn't give flowers to Devontae for having a career year, doesn't give flowers to Dallas Goedert for having a great year in scoring. And AJ is now leading the team in receiving yards, and he has another 1,000-yard season. The tush push is a dead play. It just isn't as effective anymore in the middle of this field. And let's be real, the NFL is not going to care about it come off season. Will there be any hatred for the tush push anymore? Or will other teams finally find their success in doing it, as I've seen with multiple other teams, and is stopping it really something that matters anymore? It's just, the tush-push discourse is absolutely horrid. It always has been, and you can see NFL refs are using their lack of false starts calls to their advantage, and now they're calling out an insane amount on the Eagles' offensive line. And now we just look undisciplined. It's been a big story for a lot of this midseason collapse, besides just the offensive coordinator, besides just Hurts maybe not doing his MVP thing like usual, maybe AJ having a terrible year. This O-line has been the X factor to why we've been so bad. And another thing, just weird decision, Jahad Campbell, the defensive rookie of the year, arguably, at least he's been on watch for it. He had 0 snaps on defense. That should be an eye-opener for this team. Look, I understand Jalen Phillips is the dog. Nakobe Dean's been great the past few weeks, and he's been our guy on the defensive side. And the depth runs deep for Philadelphia. But what about guys like Jalen Carter? They just were an absolutely non-factor in the Bears game. Again, the depth runs deep, but we need Jahad Campbell out there. And we also need to look at the secondary. Adoree Jackson's back to being a scrub. Cooper DeJean, surprisingly, being a cone out there on the field. There needs to be a lot of internal improvements for defensive players not named Nakobe Dean. And I think that, honestly, the defense was a bigger disappointment to us this week than the offense. I think the run game for the Bears just should not be that good to stomp all over us. Overall, 8-4 record is probably the most accurate reflection of this Eagles team than what most people might think, because we are 27th in offensive rating. We're down there with the worst of the league, like the Jets, Vikings, Raiders, Browns. A play calling change at this point in the season is definitely far too late. And I don't hate the decision to roll with KP as much as I didn't like the guy. But I don't think that we have reason to panic, honestly. We have an easy schedule ahead of us. Chargers, 2 Commanders games, the Raiders, obviously, I think, and I've said this before, the Bills are going to be a guaranteed loss, but maybe we can pull it off like we did in 2023. And speaking of 2023, I don't think that this is a 2023 level collapse. I think we're a little better overall, but I think that things just need to improve soon, because this wasn't the Bears beating us. It was us beating ourselves. I put full faith in Nick Sirianni and QB1 Jalen Hurts to get the offense rolling, and we need them to, because I'm not missing the playoffs this year. I don't think that we can give up this NFC East crown, especially with Dallas surging right now. We got to be the first back-to-back NFC East winner in 20, 30 years, or whatever the metric is. Now let's move on with some Sixers talk. Their most notable game in the last week was definitely their double overtime loss to the Hawks, where finally the coveted trio of Embiid, Maxey, and Paul George all started together. Embiid was all right, like he has been all year, but George missed a lot of threes, and Maxey, of course, another 40-point outing, but he ended up missing 2 huge free throws in the most Grant Williams thing I've ever seen at the end, and he kept the other team in the game. Sixers just simply lost all steam at the end. They allowed red-hot Jalen Johnson to muster 41 points and 14 rebounds, and he just outplayed the team to the very last whistle. As Embiid, George, Edgecombe come back from injury, all of a sudden we see X-Factor Drummond go down because of knee soreness. The injury bug will just never leave this team no matter what. And just like that, the Sixers are dysfunctional again. And their early stunner of a start in the NBA is just dead in the water. There's still obviously some bright spots. Talked about how Drummond's been changing his play style late into his veteran career. Maxey's been MVP candidate. But I want to talk about maybe the guy who I think has stepped up the most for the team, and that's been Dominic Barlow. He's a versatile two-way guy on a two-way contract. He shows great flashes of potential as a cutter around Maxey and has great dribble drive scoring opportunities. Paul George said himself that he's a Swiss Army knife, and that's shown with 7.9 points, 5.5 boards, 2.3 assists, and some blocks. Overall, I wasn't so worried with Embiid's comeback for the season at first, but I just can't help but think he'll for sure be medically retired in the coming years. He still directs a lot of rhythm for the Sixers. He's still like their main guy, sizing up opponents, but he lacks the mobility to be as much of a pest on defense as he was before. He wasn't cleared to play a minute in the second overtime period against the Hawks, and you have to wonder, where is the clutch factor for an older player like this who's had such a bad injury history? It's a shame because in 2023-24, before that injury that ended his season, he began the season as a clear-cut MVP candidate, and he was putting up his usual 30-plus points. Yet he played in a season-high minute total for 30 this last game. And for him being a negative on defense for the Sixers, you have to wonder what his true impact is on the floor for them. There's already discussions of needing to get rid of Paul George in the coming weeks. I just really don't know what to do in this dilemma of Joel Embiid, and it's just an absolute shame. And it just looks bleak in Philly sports, especially for the Sixers and the Eagles, but that's why we got to hold on to the Flyers. So I think everyone that's watching, if you're not on the Flyers train, there's still time to hop on before we get hot, if we're not already. So now I'd like to move on to the Clemson Corner. And man, Clemson continues to rule the state of South Carolina. Tigers have won the Palmetto Bowl over South Carolina in a dog walk, 28-14. And this was arguably one of our best games of the year. I mean, the Furman game, you could really just put an asterisk on that because that's an FCS opponent. But really balanced offensive game on both sides with passing and rushing. And they had one of their most defensively sound games this season as well. TJ Parker, Will Height, terrors. Absolute terrors for Lenora Sellers. And the pressure led to Ricardo Jones' pick six at the very end of the game. PJ Moore had himself an 100-yard game. Antonio Williams, 66-yard game. And his first win over South Carolina in his career. And it just shows you the type of offense the Tigers should have been running all year. Adam Randall even jumped out for 102 yards. It was an absolute success overall for Clemson in the game that not every fan that I knew was sold on being an absolute Clemson win. And it just shows that, again, the resiliency of Dabo, the resiliency of just this team overall to fight back, to be above 500. And, I mean, you saw both teams start out the year with high rankings. Clemson was number 4, South Carolina was number 13, I believe. And it was a hot start for South Carolina. They kept winning, and then they eventually just started losing. And they were supposed to be a threat in the SEC, and Clemson was supposed to just dog walk the ACC, but you saw a collapse for both of those teams, and it's just good to see that our collapse was a little bit, not worse, but a little bit not as bad as the Gamecocks. But good thing is Clemson's season still isn't over, thanks in part to Dabo's resilient mind frame, like I said before, but there's still the opportunity to watch for Cade Klubnik to become the 4th 10,000-yard passer in Clemson history. He's only 70 yards away from such a very high honor and achievement for Clemson quarterbacks. The stat could definitely bolster Cade's NFL draft status, and it could cement his legacy here in what I think was honestly an underwhelming showing after seeing stars like Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence destroy the college football landscape. But this upcoming Sunday is Selection Sunday, and we get to see not only, obviously the CFP bracket, but we also get to see where Clemson will finish out their season. And there's a lot of fun options for the closer, like the Pop-Tart Bowl against Arizona potentially, Wasabi Fenway Bowl versus Army in historic Fenway Park. Or personally, I think what would encapsulate this season the best would be if Dabo got mayonnaise poured on him post-game after a win and a conference against Missouri. And I think the Mayo Bowl would be the most fun game for us just because that would be a really funny end to such a weird season for us. I kind of want to get into a little tangent here. I wrote an article for the Tiger that will be coming out maybe the next week or so, talking about Lane Kiffin and his just absolute snake move to leave Ole Miss and to go to the LSU Tigers. And I think that Clemson fans should just take a step back, and we should appreciate the loyalty and the family style coaching that we get from Dabo, and the fact that he looks at his team like a family, like his sons. While Kiffin looks at his team like a commodity. Kiffin will leave teams after one bad year. He'll leave them after a year that they play really well. But Ole Miss was going to be a championship contender. Where they will be right now, I don't know. But he's now in LSU, and he's not going to coach in the playoffs. And you got Dabo, they start out like 1-3, 1-4, and he's sitting there like, you know what? I'm devoted to making this team the best that it can be. If you want me gone, I'll be gone, and I'll coach somewhere else. But I'm not leaving on my own accord. You're going to have to fire me for me to leave. And I appreciate that out of Dabo. Dabo very well could have just been like, yo, I see the Virginia Tech opening before James Franklin took it. I'm going to just jump ship, go somewhere better in the ACC. I'm going to jump ship and go to the Penn State job and kind of clean up James Franklin's mess. But no, Dabo's not going to do that because Dabo treats this program like it's a family, like it's his thing. Kiffin's going to go program to program, just kind of milking out money as much as he can. And the success, who knows if there's success there, because obviously he turned around Florida Atlantic and he got a championship with Alabama as a coordinator, but he's better as a coordinator. I don't know what success he'll just sprout out of nowhere with LSU, but Clemson plays LSU next year yet again to not start at the season, I don't believe, but they'll be playing them like week 2, week 3 at LSU. But that'll be a very fun game because it'll just see the difference between commodity and family. And I think that Dabo's really just the guy. And again, that's kind of just Dabo propaganda that I'm sprouting right now. But I think that the whole Kiffin news just make us realize that we're really blessed with having Dabo. We're really blessed with having a leader who's going to develop these guys into the best people that they can be, and not just develop them into being a money-making championship machine. And I'm really glad that Clemson is not like that, because it just feels so much better here. It just feels so much, that phrase, they're slinging these hills. There really is. It's not like one that people will just come and go at. Even the lack of transfer portal movement, it doesn't feel as artificial as other teams in the NIL era. And I think that Kiffin's just a snake. I think that he kind of encapsulates the whole snaky feeling that just college football and college basketball and just really all the college sports kind of have right now, especially with coaches just leaving left and right, and then maybe they'll have a really good spot at Ole Miss, which could have been a powerhouse coming up. But of course, he had to jump ship, go to LSU. It makes no sense. And I'm glad that Dabo didn't take the LSU job. I'm glad that he didn't go anywhere. It's a lot of thoughts, and I'm excited to get my article out about that, but that's just me kind of rambling about that. Finishing out the Clemson Corner, I got to say that the basketball team tonight actually is going to be facing probably their actual biggest challenge in non-conference play with the upcoming ACC-SEC challenge against number 12 Alabama. Alabama is currently 14th in KenPom ratings. They boast a top 3 offense masterminded by Nate Oates. The Tigers are 25th in KenPom ratings. They have the 28th best offense and 42nd best defense. Brad Brownell comes into the game with a 2-2 record against Alabama. And Clemson right now is fighting for a top 25 ranking spot. And I think that a good fight versus Alabama, or even against BYU next week, that'll surely bring them into the poll. The truth is, the direction of the season and our true strength as a basketball program definitely rests in the hands of these next 2 matchups for the Tigers, especially when they have a number 34 net rating, and now they have 2 back-to-back quad 1 opponents. They already have a 1 quad win over Georgia, and it's with just all the depth, talk, and the all-around performances from 1 to number 12 on the roster, Clemson's chances at a tournament run are, again, fairly underrated. And it all just rests in the hands of Brownell's abilities versus Alabama. And it's going to be a really fun game. And it's going to be one that people from all over the country are going to watch. So I'm excited for that. That'll be tonight. And it's going to be really fun. Close up the pod with what might actually be the most disappointing segment, would be checking in on my fantasy team. We are just falling off a cliff here. We're 6-7 now. Not even a meme. Caleb Williams, 946. Whatever. It's against the Eagles. You can't really do much. Travis Etienne does nothing in a good win for Jacksonville. Kyron Williams, 13 points. Yeah, whatever. You still got a touchdown. Justin Jefferson is just 4 interceptions. Against Seattle, you can't even do anything because, again, I have Seattle's defense. If I didn't have the 28 points from Seattle, it would have been one of the worst fantasy performances from any team in the history of our fantasy league. So, I mean, Cameron Dicker is just doing what he usually does. Dalton Schultz, 12.5. Thank you for stepping up this late in the year, especially with Laporta being out, and then Brenton Strange, he's projected 6 points. I don't know if I'm supposed to play Brenton Strange or not. And Kenneth Gainwell, you really just faked me out. 6.5 points against Buffalo. I mean, seriously, I know the Steelers just suck, and I don't have any faith in them, and all of a sudden Gainwell is a nothing burger, but Amon-Ra St. Brown, 0 points, is probably the biggest surprise, as he got injured early into that Green Bay Packers game, just early enough that I couldn't sub someone else in, but it didn't matter anyway. And that's just going to be maybe the end of my season. I think Amon-Ra going out is the end of my season. I don't know what to do here. I'm 6-7. I need the guy that I played this week. The guy I played this week was fighting with me for a playoff spot, like I said last week. And now I'm screwed. If I don't I'm going to be playing the worst team in the league next week. But with Amon-Ra out, my team's only supposed to be projected 105. The other team, the worst team in the league, projected 103. I've had like 4 80-point performances this season. This has been the most disappointing fantasy team I've ever had. This is literally the Clemson Tigers in fantasy. It's absolutely terrible. I got really frisky with my trades and my draft early in the year, so maybe that's why it hasn't really been working out. But I have Justin Jefferson and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Any other year, past 3 years, I would have been the league favorite. What is happening here? Why does J.J. McCarthy suck? Why does Max Brosmer, or whatever his name is, suck? And Justin Jefferson is not as QB-proof as everyone told me he was. So maybe that was a complete joke of a trade. And maybe, just maybe, if my guy, my one buddy who is the worst team in the league, he's the guy who gave me Jefferson. If Jefferson puts up like 2 points again, and I lose to him, and then the guys I traded away, A.J. Brown and Kenneth Walker, put up like 15 or like 20 each, and I lose, I'm actually going to just leave the league. That would be the most disappointing way to end it out. 6-8. I can barely make it in 7-7. The guy who's the commissioner always tells me that if you already have 7 losses in the year, you're basically screwed. And maybe it's true. Maybe I'm already screwed. Maybe I'm done. The guy that beat me, he has 7 losses too. So it's really just going to be a fight to see if everything works out in my favor. But this is just not a championship team. We've fallen off. Our depth kind of sucks now. But at least the Seahawks defense, they saved me from being one of the worst performances ever. I would have had like 50 points without them. So there's a lot to be desired here. And I mean, we're going to have Keenan Allen next week. We're going to be taking Kenneth Gainwell out of the mix. We're going to put in David Montgomery again. But what am I supposed to do here? What am I supposed to do here in fantasy? And it's just not my year. And it's the year of the guys. Everyone that's made the playoffs right now are all guys that didn't do it. This is the year of the guys who have been historically terrible at fantasy. And right now we got a guy that's going to be the best in our league's history. We got the commissioner making the playoffs for the first time after he was the only guy never to make the playoffs. Guy who was the worst, who joined the league last year, he was the worst last year. He's now in the, he might be bumping me out of the spot. It's just falling apart. Everyone that's kind of was irrelevant last year is now relevant, and it's just the guys who were mainstays of the playoffs are now out of it, and it's just league is just turning on its head. And I just don't know what to do about it, and I don't know if I can do anything about it, but just hope for next year, and hope that maybe things go in my favor and I can make a dark horse playoff run. But that'll be all for the pursuit this week. Once again, happy Thanksgiving. I hope everyone had a really good holiday. Have a great day, everyone. And just 2 shout-outs. Go Tigers and go Flyers. I'll see you all next time.